Danny Candy.
Too stupid.
Send me your tunes. Danny Candy.
Cartoon.
Danny Candy.
Hey guys, that was Jesus, of course, the person who made our awesome theme song. And you know what? I think I heard a new rumor about him.
What's the rumor?
I think deep in a lab somewhere, he genetically modified several mice to become deadmau5.
Really?
Yes.
That's quite an origin story.
Yes, he created deadmau5 and Daft Punk.
Well, he's been turning tables in all directions, you might say.
So today we're going to be doing an only audio podcast because of last-minute video problems. We were originally going to do it on Google Hangout, but we had some issues running it.
Setting up stuff is hard.
Yeah, so, but we don't need many visuals, because today we're talking about Adventure Time and Regular Show, two big modern-day shows.
That's the beauty of animation, is you make your own visuals.
Yes. So, kind of a little backstory. We have Adventure Time, started in 2010, I believe.
Long time ago now, weirdly.
Yeah, it's like good 4 years ago. And Regular Show was started in 2010 as well, I think.
There you go. Yep. January 10th.
So, both the... Yeah.
I think.
September 6th is what I got. So, what are you talking about?
I'm on their wiki.
Yeah, that's where we are. So, both of these kind of came from similar but different backgrounds. They were both based on short pilots. One of them was made for Frederator's cartoon compilation.
Mm-hmm. Several years ago, too.
Yeah, I think like 2008, Adventure Time was started as basically a short, kind of like how Dexter's Lab and Powerpuff Girls started, for random cartoons, is what it says.
As well as Fairly Odd Parents.
Yeah. Made by Mr. Pendleton Ward, very talented person.
Yes.
Whereas Regular Show came from a short as well, but a very, very different short. And can you kind of explain how it was different?
They did drugs. It was a very adult short, actually. He was, I think, pitching it to Adult Swim at the time, J.G. Quintel, the creator. And it was literally a short about two guys working in a candy shop late at night, and they put
it was
acid.
It was a convenience store.
Yeah, that's right. And they put acid in like, I think the candy or the popcorn, and they began to hallucinate. And it's the first time you actually see Benson the Gumball Man show up, but his friend turns into him, and he just visualizes him at it.
Yeah, and it was definitely not meant to be like a cartoon at all. It was more meant to be like you said, it was pitched to Adult Swim.
Yeah, it was very definitively adult content.
Yeah.
Which, if you watched our last podcast, you'd understand the difference.
But what's interesting is that both these cartoons play around the same time. Adventure Time comes on first on Cartoon Network, and Regular Show usually follows. The thing is, the time slot actually means a lot, because Regular Show is technically for an older audience. It's TV-13, I believe.
Yeah.
Whereas Regular Show, I think, is just like for young teens. You
said Regular Show twice. I think you meant Adventure Time.
I meant Adventure Time, of course. That's probably going to happen a lot tonight.
Well, I mean, it is actually really interesting because both these shows are very big, with a large range actually of demographics. They both started around the same time. They're both played, I think, they're played on the same channel, and they're kind of drawing in the same audience but for different reasons.
Yeah, and they're kind of similar in several different ways, which we'll discuss a little bit later. Mm-hmm. But I think the main reason for that is because the two main people, Pendleton Ward for Adventure Time and J.J. Quintel for Regular Show, is that they both came from the same place.
Yeah.
They were both working as writers on The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack.
Yep.
Which is considered the second coming of Dexter's Lab, because everybody from that show went on to work on something.
Yeah, and it was a great show.
Yeah, it was
I
a great
love
show.
Flapjack.
It also had Alex Hirsch, who went on to make Gravity Falls.
Mhm. Make
Steve
Gravity
Little-
Falls. Yeah.
Steve Littles, who was an actor, works on Eastbound and Down.
Mm-hmm. It also, I think it had, what's his name? Plays Lemon Grab, who's on a bunch of stuff now.
Oh, Justin Roiland.
Justin Roiland, yeah, I think he was on there too. I think
Yeah.
he wrote for it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he works on an IFC show that I mentioned in the best of 2013 episode. I can't remember the name of it right now.
He works on Rick and Morty.
He works on Rick and Morty too.
He plays
Yeah.
both. He plays the two main characters on that show. He also was the one who pitched the original idea to Dan Harmon,
Yeah, and
which is also a great show.
of course you also have Kent Osborne, who is a storyboard artist and writer for stuff like Camp Lazlo and SpongeBob, and of course also worked on Adventure
Yeah.
Regular Show. So Flapjack is and in case people are not sure what I'm talking about when I say it's the second coming of Dexter's Lab, what I mean is not that it's like Dexter's Lab, but I mean that it's a show where a lot of people got their start. Dexter's Lab, of course,
Yeah.
is known for having the likes of
Seth
something-
MacFarlane for one.
Seth MacFarlane for one. You have Butch Hartman. I'm pretty sure worked on there.
Jenny Tarkovsky was the originator of Dexter's Laboratory, but he also got really big afterwards with shows like Samurai Jack.
Yeah, and yeah, just a lot of people came from there, and then you have this show like this. So that's kind of my little thing that I've always kind of noticed about shows like that. So the creators of both of them, J.G. Quintel was asked by Cartoon Network to make a kids show based on it instead of a adult show.
Just to kind of tune it down a bit, because they wanted to get sort of an older audience, but they didn't want an adult audience. So they apparently told JG, we'll let you get away with a little bit more than you typically would with traditional kids shows, if you're interested. And he was like, well, yeah, man, I want to make cartoons.
So yeah, and of course they were friends when they were going to school together too, apparently.
Yeah.
At CalArts, where you'll notice if you
Everybody comes from.
you'll notice if you watch cartoons and look up who makes them, a lot of them come from CalArts.
Well, that is the foremost school of animation. When I was going to art school here in Dallas for animation, that's what our professors told us, was like, yeah, at some point go to CalArts, because that's where you learn how to animate.
So let's talk about what makes some of these different.
Okay.
So, well, first off, they are completely different settings.
Yes. Adventure Time is set far into the supposed future, supposedly here on Earth, after basically humanity has disappeared for some reason.
Yeah.
Whereas regular show exists more or less in the current time.
More or less being a key word. It's regular show is kind of they try to make it seem like it's in the modern day, but they use a lot of stuff like 8-bit video games and video cassettes.
It's very 80s retro kind of modern day.
Yeah, but I think it's more that they just try not to make a specific time too, because that's something you notice in stuff like cartoons like Ed and Nettie. They didn't have a specific time period where they're in. They was just kind of they were in a modern setting.
I've heard a theory that Ed, Edd n Eddy was supposed to take place during the 50s. But that's one of the things that was great about the show, was that it's a really good expression of how you are when you're a kid, and it's kind of timeless in that aspect.
Yeah.
It could be from any time.
Yeah, they're trying to do an entire idea of timelessness. And talking about the overall plots is weird, because they have plots, but they're not the most important things about the show.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like how life. I mean, you have an end goal in your life, but you don't. It's not a focus of everyday life, and that's kind of reflected in these shows. Because with regular show, I don't really think they have a goal. I mean, it's literally just a show about two guys who don't want to do anything.
Yeah. Like, their goal is to not have a goal, basically.
is to get out of work.
Yeah. They're very episodic shows. They very much live from episode to episode, and there's a lot of Deus Exing there, but what's interesting about these is that there's not a definite Deus Ex.
Yeah.
Like there'll be definite times where it's like the house that they're living in regular show will just get demolished and it'll be okay next time. But and like I think,
Yeah.
and then with like Adventure Time, like I was actually watching season 2 earlier on DVD, which you can buy now. I was watching it earlier, and they had the slug episode, the snail episode,
Yeah.
where their house gets destroyed basically.
Just demolished.
And yeah, it's fine the next episode.
Or like the house hunting episode at the
Oh,
end
yeah.
where they come back and they get hypnotized by King Worm and there's all these worms around. And the next episode is just like, hey, what's up? Yeah,
Yep.
we've been fine the whole time. It's
Yeah, there's definite reset at a lot
it's
of
played
episodes.
for laughs a lot, the idea.
Yeah, but they there is plot elements that do stay with multiple episodes.
Yes, definitely.
One of the main ones being in both of them actually is the relationships.
Yeah.
You'll have stuff like you have Lady Rainicorn and Jake have a fully fledged relationship that develops throughout the seasons and gets to a climax.
Yeah.
And you have the thing with regular show right now where you have the whole build up with Margaret and then she leaves, and I think that there's another person now. I'm still catching up on this.
There was a New Year's kid. You remember the Cloud Girl that he
Oh, yeah,
went
yeah,
on
yeah.
a date with? He runs into her. Yeah,
Okay.
and they like hint at something, you know.
But here's what I want to talk about that also kind of separates these two things. There is definitely a change between the beginning of Adventure Time and where we are at now. There's a definite change, especially if you watch earlier episodes. And you could say some of that has to do with just how the writing and the animating has changed, but I think there's also kind of a development in character too, because you have these characters which were definitely not one-dimensional, but were less dimensional at the beginning, where
Yeah.
you had Finn who just wanted to save people, Jake who just wanted to hang out, Princess Bubblegum who just was a princess basically. Now you have Finn who is kind of trying to figure out his place in this world, because he's the only living human as far as he knows, and he's just trying to figure out what he's there to do and where he's supposed to go now that he's actually growing older. You have Jake, who's now a father, and is trying to like balance out hanging out with his friends versus being a family man and hanging out with his wife.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, I particularly am a big fan of how they've developed Finn, because usually when it's the protagonist, they're not necessarily perfect, but they're very endearing, and most of the choices they make are right, or they learn easily from their mistakes. And Finn, they've been showing lately, doesn't do that. He makes mistakes, and he sticks by them a lot, and they usually end up carrying throughout the entirety of the episode, and usually into the next ones.
Yeah.
He's a kid. They actually develop him really well as a kid.
yeah.
And I just think that's really nice.
And then I think one of the more interesting things about that show is the development of what I guess you call the two main females, which is Marceline and Princess Bubblegum. At the beginning of the show, it was Princess Bubblegum is the nice goody two shoes, and she's the ultimate good, while Marceline was not really an evil person, but what I called the friendly antagonist.
She's the rebel chick.
She was the rebel chick. But then as time went on, you started to notice that it's very subtle too. But if you look at it now, Bubblegum is not exactly a good character.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like good characters in she's well made. I mean like good characters in her intentions might not always be for the
best. Yeah.
And
we've started to see a lot more weaknesses from Marceline, like just pretty much anytime Hambo's involved.
Hambo, or anytime they mention Simon, which I think in this upcoming episode this is recorded before the next episode of It Plays, which that's a very it's the next episode where Ice King gets reverted back into Simon, and they try to find his wife.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah,
They're
Betty.
gonna go find Betty.
Yeah,
Betty,
this
my
is
princess.
this is recorded before Betty played, so we don't know what happened.
Interesting.
So
It's gonna be fun.
and we're probably going to be learning a lot more about Marceline there too. So it's kind of interesting as time went on, the characters have almost switched. Now, Bubblegum is not like an antagonist, but she doesn't exactly get along with Finn like she used to. Whereas
Yeah.
Marceline now has shown more of her to, for lack of a better term, shown
Her sensitive side.
her humanity.
Yeah.
But that is different from regular show, where a lot of that is the same from the beginning to the end. We learn more about the characters, but it's more development from their past to where they are now.
Yeah.
As the seasons went on, we learned a lot about, especially a lot about the character Skips. We learned a lot about Muscle Man and Benson and all them and why they're like they are now. This is more. Adventure Time was more starting at a point and evolving to it, whereas regular show is more we're at a point and we're going to see how they evolve to that point.
Well, and I think this is one of the reasons that it works so well. The idea of Adventure Time being just for the slightly older kids, and then regular show being for the teenagers and people coming out of that, because that's literally the timeline that we're seeing, and it has to do with the character development. We see Finn's character get developed a lot because he's going through that journey. We don't see it as much with Mordecai and Rigby or the entire cast because they're already in adulthood. And they're at that point now where they figure out how all the things that they've been through have pieced together into the life that they have.
Exactly. With regular show, there's definitely development. I will not deny that.
Oh yeah.
But we're more seeing we're more seeing day-to-day adventures of them and learning a bit about where they came from.
Yeah.
Especially since they're adults. They've apparently learned a lot of these lessons and are just relearning them because they're lazy.
Well, I mean, it's like, okay, talking to girls, as far as I know, doesn't get easier with age.
No, that's never something that ever gets easier.
As you become more comfortable with who you are, it changes the way you approach it. And that's why I really loved the whole Margaret going off to college thing, because it was the first time we got to see really overarching development, but it was still very muted, as they usually do here. Mordecai wasn't changing as a person. He was just learning how the person he isn't going to be able to adapt to this change in his life.
Exactly. So it's weird that they are both progressing at the same length, but to different ends.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah, and I think that works incredibly well with what they're going for the series.
It really does, and it kind of all just came together so perfectly that these two shows came out almost exactly at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. So we kind of talked about the characters. Let's take a look at each of the characters.
Okay.
So starting with Adventure Time, we have Finn, played by Jeremy Shada.
Mm-hmm.
Formerly played by his older brother, actually.
Yep.
In the original pilot, where his character's name is Penn.
Penn.
Yeah, Penn. He is Link. He's Link.
Yeah, that was the idea.
He is the overall good character. He is always the kind of person that will do whatever it takes to save as many people as possible.
And he's on a crazy quest for swords.
Yeah, he loves swords. And I think that really speaks to a lot of, the younger generation, which is you gotta have the sword. Especially with his latest conquest, which I wonder how they're gonna turn that into a toy. The grass sword.
Yeah. It'll probably be like a slap wrist or something.
That'd be awesome.
I'd buy it.
Yeah, me too.
I love that thing. I thought it was a really cool way to go about that episode, actually. The idea of the acceptance of the curse. On and off. I was like, yes! They lost a cool sword and they got a cooler one.
But he also has had complications as he's a growing boy.
Yep.
That he's starting to realize that he likes girls. And
more importantly, he's the only one of his kind, and he doesn't have, strong human parental figures. So we get to see a different way that these problems are usually approached. Because usually you go to your parents, you ask them their advice. As far as we know, the people who raised him were dogs, and they're not around during this part of his life. So it's kind of just, we see how, I think really well how it's just, I go out there and I try something and I see what happens.
Yeah. And with that, like, the closest thing right now he has to, like, a parental figure is Jake, his brother, played by John DiMaggio, who a lot of people know as Bender.
Who's supposedly a lot older than him.
In dog years, yes.
Yeah.
They're both the same age, but since he is a dog, he is technically older.
He's older. He ages faster or something.
Like they're both 14 years old, but I think like in dog years, just being like in his 30s or something. I don't know.
Yeah. In like the pilot, he was supposed to be like 28.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Something like that.
He was supposed to be Bill Murray.
He basically acts as the guide to Finn.
Yeah.
He's his best friend, but he also kind of teaches him life lessons. And they kind of reflect that onto him by having him, like, basically have a past, like apparently he used to rob banks at some point, or whatever that
He used
episode.
to steal bikes too.
Steal bikes, yeah. And he has
was wrong.
And he has a wife. I don't know if to call it a wife or a life mate.
He has a partner.
Yeah, he has a partner with Lady Rainicorn, who is a rainbow
Unicorn.
Rainbow unicorn, basically, who travels as a light beam, basically.
She's from the Crystal Dimension.
Is she?
That was the idea, was that the Rainicorns and the dogs fought for power in the Crystal Dimension, and from my understanding, the Rainicorns are actually from the Crystal Dimension.
Okay.
I don't know if dogs are. I
Well,
don't think they are.
we figure dogs are from Earth. Because dogs are from Earth. And he has kids, too.
Yeah, he has 5 of them, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's an interesting note about that, we've only heard 2 of them talk. But the 2 of that have talked are played by 2 character actors from Bob's Burgers.
Yep.
Which, of course, I don't think John DiMaggio has ever been on Bob's Burgers.
If he I think he probably has, but he probably played like one of those like really minor roles.
Yeah. But
because Bob's Burgers is really interesting in the way they do cameos.
Yeah. And of course, I'm pretty sure this is getting a little off topic, but has the main guy from Bob's Burgers ever been on Adventure Time?
No, I don't think so. His name escapes me at the moment, but I know you're talking about. It's John something.
Dang
it. But yeah, no, he hasn't. As far as I know.
H. Sean Benjamin.
That's it. H. John Benjamin.
All right, I had to look that up. Because I know it's going to bother our listeners too.
Oh, by the way, if you want to see good animation, watch anything with H. John Benjamin in it.
Yeah.
With the exception of that one Aqua Teen Hunger Force episode.
Definitely. So beyond that, we have the 2 female leads. Closer you're going to get to female leads, which is Princess Bubblegum, the Princess of Candy Kingdom, who is a nice person and will do what is best for her kingdom. But
she's a leader. I mean, she's made more than a few questionable sacrifices for the sake of her kingdom.
Yeah, and one of the interesting dynamics between Finn and Princess Bubblegum is that Finn is a person that will always do what's best for absolutely everybody, no matter what it does to him.
Exactly.
Whereas Princess Bubblegum is more of a for the greater good type, or for the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. She will sacrifice people if it means saving more people. Which
as she has done.
Yeah, she has literally done before. And actually, in the latest episode, one of the latest episodes, she sacrificed the one guy who's played by Brack from I can't remember his name, James something.
Yeah.
And then You can tell we did our research.
All right. You're
There's a lot of Adventure Time that we have to get through. So
talking about rattle balls, aren't you?
no, one before that.
Oh.
Where they're like going on like they're going out to a zombie infested land,
That's right.
and Finn went to sacrifice himself, but was basically knocked out, and instead the extra person that went on the journey too was sacrificed. And all I remember about him is that his name is James, and he's played by the person who plays Brack. And that at the end they clone him and recreate.
Watch Brack. It's good.
Yeah, the Brack show. So we also have Marceline,
Yes.
which was kind of
Who is
introduced.
pretty much the exact opposite of Princess Bubblegum.
Yeah, she only travels at night. She is the vampire queen. She's 1,000 years old and really mean.
She's basically the daughter of the devil.
Yeah. Her dad,
Yeah.
Hudson Abadir, is the leader of the Nightosphere and wants her to take over. But
And she doesn't want to.
yeah, and we've kind of learned through kind of osmosis of multiple storylines that apparently she has not spent all her time with her father. She spent
Yeah.
a good amount of time on Earth with the other main character, though I guess you have to call him
Basically the antagonist, yeah.
yeah, the Ice King, who is played by Tom Kenny,
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob, who I'm gonna go ahead and say I like Tom Kenny playing Ice King more than I like him playing SpongeBob.
I think he gets to get a lot more subtle humor in as Ice King than he did as SpongeBob, because SpongeBob was off the wall. It was great, but it was always off the wall. And Ice King he's kind of more of a real person than SpongeBob was, which is not shocking when you analyze it. I've got dropsies.
He's also gotten a lot weirder as time's gone on, which is saying something because he was weird to begin with.
Well, I mean, that's the entire point of his character, was that he's just an old person. He's lost his mind.
He's lost his mind because he's an old person and because he's being cursed by a magic crown.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, and the reason that we had to basically label him the antagonist, is because at the beginning of the series he was the antagonist. He stole princesses.
That's just what he was.
Yeah, he stole princesses. He tried to marry them. At one point he stole pieces of princesses to make a monster.
Frankenstein them together.
Yeah.
And then wrote a song about it.
Yeah.
It was messed up.
But the reason that we kind of called him the quote unquote antagonist is because nowadays he's more just a person.
Well, I mean, they show more of, antagonists are always they're people. They're just motivated people. And you see a lot of it is just him being crazy but desperately wanting to belong. I mean, even down to the fan fiction he wrote, Fiona and Cake, that he brought to life because he figured they were the only people who would ever appreciate him.
Yeah,
and it ended up with his book coming out instead of them.
Yeah, which I guess we should talk a little bit about.
Yes.
Adventure Time has a very, very unique thing where and in a lot of fan works, you'll sometimes see the infamous gender swap of a character.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting about this is that the gender swap of the Adventure Time characters actually made it into the series.
Yeah, it's official now. And I'm sure it's not the first time that a cartoon has done this thing, but it's like the first legitimate deciding of it to make an entire reality based upon it.
Yeah, and they've always been very specific to treat it like what it basically is. It's fan work.
Yeah.
It's literally fan work.
Yeah, and they've done more than that. It's never a plot device of an episode, but literally just the backdrop of an episode.
But they do take the time to flesh out all the characters.
Exactly.
And whereas in a lot of stuff where a gender swap will usually just be the female or male version of the character of the main series, I'd actually go as far to say the Fiona and Cake characters are different from their counterparts.
They're very different.
Fiona is very much more of a she's also an awkward teenager,
Mm-hmm.
but I think she seems like more in control of herself. She seems to understand herself a little more than Finn.
Well, and she's not seeking the approval of people around her.
Yeah, she's seeking the romantic eye of one person, but she seems pretty comfortable with who she is.
Yeah.
Cake is also Cake. I can't really say too terrible much about her differences because she's sassier basically than Jake.
Yeah, I mean, she's the sassy best friend.
Yeah,
That's
which
just
fits.
it.
Yeah,
It works. It does. But it's very. She's not really so much a guide for Fiona as she is just
the best friend.
Yeah, the roommate.
And then you have Prince Gumball, who is interesting in that, despite being the male version, he's a little more airheaded and bubblier than Bubblegum.
I think they did that specifically because they were like, we got Neil Patrick Harris to play him. How do we write this? And then they kind of went crazy. That's what I would do. But it works with him, he's got this kind of, I'm a genius, but there's no one there to tell me no kind of thing going on. Like he's well-meaning and he's smart, but he doesn't have that kind of moral backbone that says, this may be a step too far.
Yeah,
it's a lot more muted than it is with Princess Bubblegum, but it plays well. He's a calmer version of her.
And then you have Marshall Lee, who is the male version of Marceline, played by Donald Glover.
And I think he's pretty much the same, to be honest.
Yeah, he's basically the same, except he doesn't really do regular songs. He's more of a rapper.
Yeah.
Because the person who plays
Donald Glover for you.
Yeah, the person who plays him is more of a rapper. That's basically how it is. And then probably the biggest change between the two universes is the Ice King to the Ice Queen.
Mm-hmm.
Ice Queen is much more malicious. She's
smarter too.
She's much smarter, she's much more malicious, and she's much darker in how she goes about things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually a lot more apparent in the comic book that was also released about Fiona and Cake. Which
is very good, by the way.
Yeah, wherein basically they hatch this plan to get back the Flame Prince, who appears in it, and is also a very different character, which I guess we could talk a little bit about in a little bit.
Yeah.
But they try to sneak into her place disguised as a prince, and Ice Queen immediately sees through. Like she knows exactly what's going on, and and she basically catches them in her own trap. Whereas in the regular version, that would probably have just wouldn't have worked, or that probably would have worked perfectly.
They probably just would bust in and be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's watching a story.
So yeah, it's interesting that there's an official version of a gender swap, and it'd be interesting to get a bigger series out of it, but it's probably never going to happen.
Well, I mean, I kind of appreciate the fact that there's not a huge, because we have we already have the comic book, which is, a great way to expand it, and usually allows a lot more creative freedom than what they would control on TV. And then you just have a couple episodes that are coming out.
Yeah.
Like every now and then. I think it really works very well because it started out as fan art, and it's kind of set back to allow the fans to continue expanding upon it.
Yeah.
So I think it works really well.
So we're kind of talking about characters, and one other character that kind of got introduced in the middle and kind of grew into prominence is Flame Princess.
Yeah, she started as a tertiary character, eventually developed into a secondary or almost primary character, and now she's kind of back to being a tertiary character.
Yeah, her kind of development started when Finn basically figured out that he's never going to have a relationship with Princess Bubblegum, and Jake wanted to help fix that, so he went to the Fire Kingdom to get him a girlfriend, basically.
Yeah.
And he figured out way too late that this girlfriend that he went to go get him is completely insane.
Is out of her mind.
And she starts setting stuff on fire. But they develop a relationship after, they realize that, they kind of like each other. And throughout, I think...
it kind of plays out that she's evil, but she doesn't know it, and she doesn't really want to be evil once she discovers what evil is.
Yeah, and her whole development is that she was created to be evil, but she was never really given the choice to be good or evil. She was just created to be that.
Yeah.
And she breaks up with
It was
Finn.
an interesting character because you get to see. Sorry, but we got to see this whole different aspect of particularly of Finn, because I mean, when we were introduced to Finn at the beginning of the series, he already knew Princess Bubblegum, and we can assume he was already harboring a pretty big crush on her. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, young boys, we've been there.
Yeah.
It's wholly different with Flame Princess, because when he first meets her, we get to see their origin first of all, and when he first meets her, she's actually trying to burn down his house.
Yeah.
And from that, sort of this whole different emotion blossoms out of him. It's really cool.
Yeah. So, and they're basically together through, I think, season 4 and into season 5, but they basically break up at one point because Finn starts using her because of some dream.
Yeah.
And she doesn't like being used, so she basically goes back and takes over the Fire Kingdom.
And takes over pretty well too.
Yeah, she takes over. She overthrows her dad, and in recent episode, when her dad tried to fight back against her, she fights him back. She fights him back and traps him again. And it's revealed that now she is in a relationship with one of the oddest character choices, Cinnamon Bun.
Cinnamon Bun. He's the kindest word for him is damaged.
Yeah, like the explanation they have for him, which is in the tote tarting episode, he's half baked.
Yeah.
He's literally half baked, and he's kind of an idiot. But he spends time in the Flame Kingdom, and it's kind of figured. Now, it was never really stated, but it's figured that since he spent time in basically what's a giant oven, he's now fully baked, and he's no longer an idiot.
Yep. He's stalwart, in fact.
Yeah, and he's very protective of the Flame Princess and appreciates her for who she is. And they kind of ended it by having them start a relationship. And it's kind of, if you were to tell me right now that that's how they're going to end off that character, I'd actually say, you know what? Okay, that's okay.
Yeah. It's actually a decent. You're taking two characters that we were somewhat invested in, but not. I mean, back when Finn was with Flame Princess, I remember the fan art, man. They were invested in it, but they gave it time to kind of taper off once the two of them broke up. And now you got to see two tertiary characters start their own journey. It was actually really cool.
Which, speaking of, to just mention briefly, there are two other tertiary characters that had a relationship, which is Tree Trunks and
Mr. Pig.
Mr. Pig, who completely just in the background. They only had a few episodes together, but you have one episode of Tree Trunks meeting Mr. Pig, one episode where they get really close, uncomfortably close, and then one episode where they get married, and they're the side characters.
And they do some weird stuff.
Yeah.
And we get to see Lumpy Space Princess lose her mind.
Which, speaking
I've been waiting for since the beginning.
Last character to mention is Lumpy Space Princess, played by Pendleton Ward. Played
by the creator. It is a perfect satire of the snobby teenager.
Yeah.
The snobby, self-obsessed teenager.
Exactly, and he plays it up to a T.
Oh, perfectly.
And there's not really much to say about her. She's a teenage girl made of space lumps.
She's very self-obsessed, but she's not inherently bad. She's tactless, and she's socially awkward, as most teenagers are.
Yeah, and I guess the only real development with her is that she was living with her space parents, and then she eventually just decides to leave.
Yeah.
And she's been living in the woods ever since.
Hasn't she gone back?
No, I think she's still living in the woods.
Is she? Because I know she turned into a monster for that one village, and then they brought her parents sandwiches to her. I always thought that meant that she went back to live with her parents. I don't know.
I'm not sure, but so that's Adventure Time.
Yeah.
Hop over to regular show.
Okie dokie.
with regular show, you have basically what's a collection of oddly designed characters, but very down-to-earth characters.
Yeah.
You
They're basically anthropomorphic animals or machines that are surprisingly human in the way that they emote and they react to the world around them.
Yeah, you have Mordecai and Rigby. Mordecai
Yeah.
played by J.G. Quintel, and Rigby played by William Salyers.
Mm-hmm.
Salyers, sorry. Who are just two best friends. They've grown up together. They've known each other for basically all their life, and they just every day they get into adventures.
They work at the park, which is run by their boss Benson, who is a sentient gumball machine, who's kind of a really big stickler for the rules, almost to the point of kind of being a bad boss.
Yeah.
But again, that's an aspect of being the boss. Is
Well,
you
if
have to
If he was a bad boss, he wouldn't have gotten the world's best boss mug.
exactly, and that's the point. And plus, the people working for him is Mordecai and Rigby, and
Yeah.
they're really bad employees.
So you have the two people who basically run the park, which are Benson and Pops, both played by Sam Marin. We kind of mentioned Benson, but Pops is kind of an out there character. He's basically a giant lollipop who's kind of
He
not,
is detached.
yeah, he's not all there. He pays people in lollipops. And I think he's
He's a character from one of JG's first earlier animatics, the fancy man from Lollipop Land,
yeah.
about a guy who goes to a restaurant, has a wonderful meal, and then tries to pay with lollipops. And because where he's from, where he's the ambassador of Lollyland, it's perfectly normal to pay people in lollipops. But in America, everybody gets up in a tiff about it.
Exactly, and he's just like his whole character is that he's very just kind of a non sequitur.
Yeah.
He just kind of talks and does whatever he wants. He has a flying car. He kind of has weird solutions for everything, but sometimes they work.
He reacts to the world around him, but he's not aware of how it's reacting to him, basically.
And there's another character voiced by Sam Marin named Muscle Man,
Muscle Man.
whose biggest thing is that he has one joke.
Want to know what that one joke is?
My
He's the obnoxious friend that everybody had growing up, you know. But he's also a surprisingly hard worker.
Yeah, and he's probably one of the harder workers at the park. And another interesting thing about him is, whereas everybody else is kind of struggling with like relationships, where you have Mordecai is having trouble with Margaret, and Margaret's friend is wanting to go out with Rigby.
Mm-hmm.
Muscle Man has a girlfriend.
Yeah, and he's perfectly well adjusted for being as obnoxious as he is.
Yeah,
But
he has,
I guess that's just the point of his character, is that he goes after what he wants.
yeah, and I think one of the main things about him is that he seems like the person who would just be. His whole design is that he's kind of like a monster. He's kind of just look like like kind of a mix between Frankenstein and Swamp Man.
Yeah.
How I would say his look is, but he's perfectly well adjusted individual.
I mean, he's a little annoying butterball, but he's got an exorbitant amount of confidence.
Yeah,
Which I think is why he's so successful.
and his best friend is a ghost too.
I mean, he almost ended up being yes, exactly, High Five's ghost.
Yeah.
Who got a little character development of his own in the most recent episode, actually.
I don't know if I saw that one.
It's the most recent. You said you're about halfway through season 5?
Yeah, I'm
right?
catching up on season 5 right now.
Yeah, the most recent episode, we learn about a girl that High Five's ghost knew, I think, about 4 to 5 years ago. They met in a cafe, and they spent the whole day together. They had a wonderful time. And he wanted to get her number to hang out with her again, but she was actually leaving to go study abroad in Europe, I think. And so what she did is had him write down his number on a postcard. And she said, when I get back, I'm going to mail this to you. And we're going to meet up. And if we're not with anybody, we're going to see what happens. And so the entire episode is about them. He gets the postcard back, but he can't read the address. So they all get together to try to figure out exactly where to go to find her.
Okay.
So he gets his own character development a little bit, which was really cool.
And probably one of the most interesting characters in this is a character named Skips.
Yes, played by Mark Hamill.
He is...
Kids don't know who Mark Hamill is.
Yeah. Mark Hamill, famously known for playing Luke Skywalker and later on playing Joker in the Batman animated series. Those are his two big roles.
He's very good.
His main character is that he is the most competent person in the entire place.
Yes.
Mainly
because he's been around for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years.
Yeah, he's an immortal.
Yeah.
And he's been around for hundreds of years. I think it's only been hundreds of years because...
Just hundreds?
Because he was
a teenager in the 1700s, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
And he mentioned that's before he got his immortality.
Yeah.
So, he's been around for a long time. He's experienced all this stuff, and he has all these memorabilia, but he has these little secrets here and there where he has like the ceremonial dance.
That he has to perform every year on his birthday in order to remain immortal.
Exactly, and basically that's... And he also is best friends with an android now?
I think so.
So tell us a bit about some of the side characters, especially some of the girls that we see.
Well, there's Margaret. She's a Red Robin. She was interested in Mordecai. I mean, they spent a good amount of time, building those two up as a bit of an item. But she eventually went on to college, and they had to cut it off, unfortunately. But she worked at a coffee shop. They went and saw her all the time. And Mordecai was always really nervous about it, He'd do the stupid things, like he'd accidentally butt dial her and sing a song about the two of them. And there was a whole episode about how he wanted to go and he was trying to break into her phone to delete it. And of course, it didn't work. She ended up hearing it, and like all girls who put up with obnoxious guys, she thought it was adorable, and she didn't get mad at him or anything. So they did a lot of that kind of awkward chemistry stuff for a while with her until eventually she went off to college. They ended up breaking it off. Mordecai found a sweater of hers and went nuts afterwards, driving up to her college to try to find her.
Yeah.
But eventually learned to let her go.
And then she has a best friend named Eileen.
She has a best friend named Eileen, who's... is she a beaver?
I think something like that. And I was talking to a friend of mine, individual named Nixie, who will be hosting his own podcast very soon, which you should listen to. I was talking to him about kind of the development with the characters in this, and according to him, Eileen is probably one of the better developed secondary characters, because she is not just a figure for someone else's desire. She has her own like jokes and character development that's all to her own.
Mm-hmm.
When we first meet her, she wants to get in a relationship with Rigby.
Mm-hmm. And he's oblivious because he's an
really
idiot.
And yeah, she's just over time she's kind of hold on. Apparently she's a mole. That's what Wikipedia is telling me.
Yeah, she's a mole.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought she was a beaver, but apparently she's a mole. All I know is that
she's
but
she has
yeah,
teeth and a tail.
Yeah, that's all we knew. I guess the glasses were supposed to give it away.
Mole bad.
Since I haven't seen any of the newer episodes, I don't know if she's had any more development beyond that.
I don't think we've seen her really lately.
Yeah, all I know is that the last episode I saw was the Tants episode, where they made table pants.
Uh-huh.
And she helped make counterfeit ones, which apparently she's a good seamstress too. But the most interesting thing about her is that she's kind of a side character that is not just a desirable object.
Yeah.
Kind of which Margaret's a fine character, but that's kind of what she is.
Well, I mean, that's I think one of the main reasons they decided to eventually break it off with Margaret is because she was basically she was the trophy.
Yeah,
you know?
she was there for Mordecai to ogle.
Yeah, she was a means to an end in terms of development.
I guess
She was.
Oh, go
It's
ahead.
not that she wasn't. Well, I mean, it's not that she wasn't, a developed or even realistic character, but we never really got to see, the real aspects of her, the real side of her. We never saw her like struggle and fail in any way that related personally to her, but it was all through the experience of Mordecai. And everything that we learned about her was basically just through him, and was an aspect of his huge overbearing crush on her.
Yeah. So we have to mention one other character, and when I say mention, we're probably only going to mention him. There's a character named Thomas. He's the intern.
Yeah. He was added in what, season 3 or 4?
Yeah, he was added pretty recently.
And he's there. I mean, he's in episodes, but he's there.
He's actually literally just a joke. That's one of his characters. His joke is that everything happens to Thomas. Whenever something bad goes on, they try to blame it on Thomas. Whenever like something dumb happens, it usually happens to Thomas.
You know who Thomas reminds me of?
Who?
Gavin.
Gavin from
from Rooster Teeth. I don't know why. He's just
bit.
Got that going on with him.
And of course there's a few other people. There's Starla, who is Muscle Man's girlfriend. We don't really learn too much about her. Other than she's kind of a similar style creature. Muscle woman, I guess.
She's very supportive, though.
Yeah, she's very supportive.
Yeah.
And she'll want him to change sometimes, but usually she doesn't really care.
Yeah.
And CJ, Cloudy J.
Yeah.
Who is the replacement of Margaret.
Of Margaret. I think we'll get better development out of her, specifically because we saw her get hurt when Mordecai wanted to go to the movie with her, and then he found out that Margaret was available. So many names.
Yeah.
And so then he just offered it to Margaret and completely blew CJ off. But they've met up again recently at New Year's, and so I'm hoping we'll get more development out of her because we've actually seen something from her side. She's a lot more realistic of a character, which I think is why they went back to her after they took Margaret out.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna go ahead and ask, what do you like about Adventure Time? Just in general, like what brings you back every week to watch Adventure Time?
There's this openness about the show. All the episodes are episodic and not really attached to a very big overarching aspect, but there's this unknowing aspect of it, and they're very open about all the things that occur in this world. It's a show that was inspired in a lot of ways by the Legend of Zelda video game series, and you get that kind of same going with it, because every time you're replaying a new Zelda game, it's the same world and the same characters, but there's new things to explore and try and discover. I think that's one of the things that really works well about Adventure Time. I'd
say that it's also there is definitely some Zelda aspects to it.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone over in the past like just the similarities between character Link and character Finn. But also there's a lot of similarities between Adventure Time and basically a D&D campaign.
Yeah.
It's basically a humorous D&D campaign.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's one of the things that's cool about it is it's this entire other world.
Yeah,
that you're exploring through this avatar.
Yeah, and it's just I agree with what you said. There's a definite openness to it, and you get a feel for that these characters have to have layers like an ogre.
Yeah.
They have layers, and you kind of want to go back each week to figure out what they're about and why and what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Yeah.
And I'd actually almost say that I like regular show for the same reason, because these characters have layers, have past, and we want to go back each week to kind of figure out what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things I really love about one of the things that's so great about regular show, and I think is one of the reasons it's really successful, as I said earlier, it's very 80s retro.
Yeah.
And one of the things about being a child of the 90s and the 2000s is that everybody makes fun of the 80s because it was a ridiculous time in human history.
It was.
So many new things were being developed and going on. The hairstyles were hilarious. The music was awesome in a really stupid, goofy way. I mean, look at Devo. Devo's one of the greatest bands alive, and they just knew that all they were doing was acting silly on stage. And the show is really, really, like, they have a sandwich shop that you go to, and it's all mullets and cut-off jeans and kung fu.
Exactly.
And it gets super surreal. It almost becomes Power Rangers-esque at the end of every episode, with this magnanimous power that's brought forth that they have to overcome. It plays to those sensibilities of how foolish we were as kids, how what we thought was cool was really, really, like, just dumb.
But dumb in a glorious way.
Exactly.
And
I think that's what makes it successful.
I'll go ahead and say one of the other things I love about regular show is that they take regular situations, like very normal situations, and they just make it completely ridiculous in the best ways possible.
Yeah.
You have an episode where they go to get a burrito and they fall into the shag carpet of a 70s vehicle.
Yes! They chase a guy around in it.
Yes. You have the cutoff episodes where they have to learn basically mullet kung fu to get a sandwich.
Or the one the egg challenge, the breakfast challenge.
Yeah.
Where they have to finish their plate of breakfast to get a free hat, and they end up going into the Chamber of the Holy Grail from Raiders of the from the Last Crusade.
Exactly. And
they play it so perfectly because it's completely normal right up until the end, and then they just go crazy with it, and it skyrockets.
Exactly.
And it's so good.
And the fact that they're not afraid to just kind of they don't really make up any technology like in Adventure Time. You'd have like these fantastical inventions that Princess Bubblegum would make. They literally had an episode of a regular show where they look for a Laserdisc player.
Yeah. Or they have a robot from an 80s sitcom that lives on air from the 80s, and at the end it's just a guy in a box.
Exactly. And they watch videotapes and go to drive-in movies.
Yeah.
And that's just how they live. That's them.
Yeah. And it worked so well.
So let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
Okay.
We're going to get a little technical here, and I want to talk a little bit about the artistic elements that build up both of these shows.
Okay.
With Adventure Time. Well, let's start off with the regular show, actually. Regular show, because I was talking with Nixie a little bit about this, and he made a very good point. Regular show he said regular show borrows a lot from British comedies, such as The Mighty Boosh, and has an overall visual style that's very sitcom-like.
Yes, it does.
And we talked a little bit last time in Adult Cartoons about kind of the phenomenon of the cartoon sitcom. And I kind of agree with that. Regular show is very much a cartoon sitcom. It takes everyday life situations and makes them fantastical using the cartoon elements.
Yeah.
It like we were just talking about. It takes getting a burrito and turns it into a shootout with a 70s criminal.
Yeah. I mean, it even down to the angles they use when they're shooting. I mean, you could match them state for state from shots from like a Full House or Friends, and you'll see they're using these particular camera angles, even though as a cartoon they could draw any way they want.
Yeah.
To make it look like a sitcom transition from scene to scene.
Yeah, they never really go out there with like their camera angles. It's a sitcom. They have a one camera setup that they usually use, and it's just kind of they walk into scene and they do stuff.
Yeah.
They're actually, you know what I would say regular show probably borrowed a lot from is that 70s show.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the styles and a lot of the colors actually too match it very much to that 70s show.
Well, I mean, and that's one of the things that I actually really love that comparison because the 70s show, they're both satirizations of an era. One of them from the modern era, and one of them from the pretense of being in the actual area that it's from.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with that. And
Yeah, I think that's a great comparison.
With the British comedy, you have the Mighty Boosh, which is just
Oh my god.
it's a realist humor.
Okay, I'm gonna say this right now. I'm shocked the amount of people. If any of you listening have ever heard of Old Greg, and do not know that there is a whole series behind that sketch, go watch the Mighty Boosh. It is funny in a way that's kind of terrifying, actually. It's the closest we've ever gotten to serious like visual drugs. It's great. It's hilarious. And I'm amazed how many people don't know about the series as a large. And it's a lot like regular show in the fact that it starts with a basic premise. There's two guys. One of them's hip and fashionable. The other one's old and oblivious, even though they're technically the same age. And weird stuff happens to them.
Exactly.
That's the entire point of the show.
But I was going to say with Mighty Boosh, it's realist comedy, but there are other shows very similar to the Mighty Boosh.
Yeah.
That I think that I would actually go far as to say that regular show probably used some of them too, especially shows like Black Book.
Yes.
Which is another British comedy made by people who are similar. I don't know if they're in like the same group or anything.
No. Well, what I loved about Black Books is you have Mighty Boosh, which is out there and off the wall, but it's very, normal in presenting about that. Black Books is very subtle in the ways that it's detached from normal reality. Like the crazy bookstore owner who's very nitpicky about everything, and people almost become mechanical when they work with him.
Yeah, and he's like, I'd actually say that if anybody, I was just thinking about this earlier, Rigby is a lot like the owner from Black Books. He's a
Dylan
man who lives in his own mess, but doesn't want to mess with his own mess.
Yeah.
He has a very specific way of living and hates when people messes with his way of living.
And he loves when people do stuff for him.
Yeah, and he will always do stuff he will always just be by himself. He'll just do whatever he wants.
Yep.
And he'll try and make people do stuff for him, usually through mental manipulation.
Yeah, and he hates working.
Yeah, he lives where he works, and he hates working.
The only reason he's allowed to live there is because he works there.
Yeah.
And he's
basically
constantly trying to get out of it. Yeah, that's it. That's a good comparison. You told me about a show called The Adventures of Pete and Pete once.
Yeah,
I looked up a little bit about it.
That is definitely another show. It's actually, I'd say, Adventures of Pete and Pete is probably a little more to a precursor to British comedy because it's the American British comedy.
Yeah.
It's a surrealist show. It's kind of, if you were to make a cartoon to a live action show, that's what Adventures of Pete and Pete would be. It's very surrealist. I'm using surrealist too much. It's very weird. And it's just kind of kids today living how they would live and how they see the world. And all the characters are just oddballs. You have
out there.
You have the youngest kid in the family who has a tattoo. You have his older brother who's trying to get the girl.
Yeah.
And actually, I'd say, if I were to place anything, I'd say that Pete and Pete are probably the closest you'll get to Mordecai and Rigby as a basis. Because you have the taller, older one, or the taller, more mature one, I guess I should say, is the one trying to get the girl and is trying to focus more on a relationship and just living his life without embarrassment. Whereas the younger one kind of doesn't care. He just wants to live with fun. He doesn't like working. He likes to play.
He likes things that are cool, like video games and tattoos and mullets.
And he has... And of course, the younger one is actually played by a man named Danny Tamborelli, who was on All That, and then kind of took a he was the redheaded guy.
Nice.
And then he kind of took a long break from doing stuff, but he popped up in something recently, which was Grand Theft Auto 5. He played the son.
Cool.
So yeah, the son in Grand Theft Auto 5 of Michael. The son of Michael is actually Danny Tamborelli, who is young Pete. So, anyways, that's kind of off topic, but
Yeah.
but
yeah.
yeah.
There about history.
But okay, so let's talk about Adventure Time.
Okay, let's talk about Adventure Time.
Here's what Nick said about Adventure Time.
Okay.
Adventure Time is a fusion of quite a few elements. You have RPG video game elements, and earlier there's a skewer of kids' adventure serials and cliches, and it's given sort of a Sanrio element, is what he said. So, let me look up something real quick. Sanrio.
Sanrio is what Hello Kitty's from.
Yeah. And I was just looking that up so I could get an official definition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically the kawaii, the cute.
Yeah.
And I will agree with him. There's some earlier elements to Adventure Time that were very cute. There are some other things from Adventure Time that are very ugly.
I'm the sexiest adventurer in the world. Coming out of a 2-foot-tall elephant.
It's weird how, as Adventure Time has gone on, it's had half of it's been very kind of cutesy, half of it's just been balls to the wall weird. But
the stag.
But you'll notice that as time went on, it kept that same thing, but now they're in a different way. Before it was like there were cute-looking characters and there were ugly-looking characters. Now there's kind of more cute actions and things, while there's more kind of ugly, creepy situations.
Yeah. Well, they focused a lot less on how they design and play off the way the characters look, I think.
Yeah,
it's more about what's happening in the world around them.
And then you would have like the middle characters, which because you'd have the characters that are cute but kind of are a little creepy or weird.
Peppermint Butler.
Yeah, Peppermint Butler was a big one. One that I've always said that people don't always agree with is Choose Goose. I don't like Choose Goose.
I feel like if they'd scaled it back a bit more, I would have liked him. Or if we'd had more exposure, but he's there very briefly, and whenever he is, he's annoying.
Well, I don't like him because he looks like he's having a stroke. Like he looks like
that's part of it for me. It's just everything for me.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of him.
But one thing I kind of
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. One thing I kind of discussed with and of course I agree with Nixie, and there's definitely RPG elements to it. You have a main character who likes swords and is more interested in gaining loot and doing the closest you can get in real life to leveling up. There's an entire episode where he goes through a dungeon train, which is basically a random dungeon generator.
Yeah. How did I describe? I said something the other day. I was talking about our podcast coming up with a friend of mine, and we started talking about Adventure Time. What did I say? I said, I said, Adventure Time is what we wanted to be when we were kids. It represents how we escaped from our world and the fantasies that we played out. And regular show is what we grew into.
Yeah, which is we kind of are dragged down by the mundane world, but we don't really let it get to us.
Exactly. We find things from our past that make us smile, and we cling on to them, or we try to reinvent them and reintroduce them into our lives. I think that's one of the reasons it's so successful, particularly with older people, is because we've been through all that.
Yeah. But I've kind of discussed this in actually a paper I wrote a little while ago, was that the building of Adventure Time, and to a degree regular show too, is the idea of postmodernism. It's the culmination of the past all collected together into one show.
Yeah.
It's
the reflection of our history.
Yeah, you can see elements, and this is actually going all the way back to our first podcast, the History of Animation one. You can see elements of past cartoons in Adventure Time regular show.
Yeah.
You can watch Adventure Time. You can see Merry Melodies in those.
Yeah.
You could watch a regular show and see like you could definitely see some 80s cartoons, some of your Transformers or GI Joes.
Yep.
You could see like Mickey Mouse and stuff like that too.
I mean, all the elements are there, and that's one of the things that makes these worlds so inviting. Is there aspects of them before we've even begun to watch them? Things are familiar in them.
Exactly. So it's all Adventure Time is a culmination of basically all these cartoons that built up to it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's making its own identity through what's basically that's basically what postmodernism is. It's the culmination of ideas into one semi-referential, just semi-referential like stew. That's what it is. It's a stew. So we're kind of running toward the end here. So let's talk a little bit about what some of our favorites. What are some of your favorite episodes of Regular Show and Adventure Time?
My favorite episode of Regular Show has got to be the phone prank episode.
Oh yeah,
the 80s called. It wants its prank back, and they literally get sucked back into the 80s.
I'd actually say my favorite episode of Regular Show is probably when I think it's all the way back in season 1 where they introduced the power.
Yeah.
A bunch of baby ducks, sending them to the moon.
The keyboard that makes anything happen.
A broken soda machine, send it to the moon. Dude, where's the cards? Sorry, dude, I got bored. I started sending things to
the moon. Or what the geese episode.
Oh yeah, that was a good one recently.
Where they Voltron up at the end. Oh, it was so good. It was the perfect, because that was like the series finale, the season finale, wasn't it?
I think so, like season 3 or season 4.
I think it was, and it was just a perfectly big send off. It was really good. Adventure Time. Oh God, I really love I really have a soft spot for really the creepy episodes. Honestly, I love the stag episode. No One Can Hear You.
Which one? Oh yeah, the
hands deer.
Oh yeah, when he just pulls out the little cuffs and there's little hands under it.
Because Adventure Time does these like no other cartoon I've ever seen, when it sets up these creepy worlds, because it's not, a lot of people treat it as a severe contrast from the rest of the episode, and with Adventure Time it's not. It's literally just the entire episode has this underlying sort of power of this pulse of just something's not right here, and they do it so perfectly. I like that. I like King Worm episode.
Yeah, King Worm episode, which is in my paper I talk more about that with postmodernism. Part of it being King Worm is played by, oh geez, I just forgot his name. The cop from Chips.
Yeah,
I can't remember his name. But yeah, it's probably the weirdest episode they've done.
Mm-hmm. Hey guys, hug me. He's just rotting away. It's because it's the perfect amount of just offness,
Yeah, and apparently that episode was inspired by YouTube poops.
Nice. I love Sons of Mars. I'm actually writing a song about that.
I'd say the episodes overall that probably get me more interest are episodes based on Marceline.
Okay.
Because I find her story probably the most interesting of all. Because she's a character that when she was first introduced, you get the feeling that she has a lot of history, especially when she's talking about stuff that she's done in the world. But we're never really told about any of it. She has, 2 houses. She has one in the cave, and she has the tree house, which is technically hers, too.
Yeah.
But we never really learn about it but overall, and over time, sorry, not overall. Over time, we learn a bit more about, what she is and what she's done.
Yeah, they just kind of let it drip out, her histories piece by piece. And it's a really good character that they've built, because it's not like Finn where he's there constantly, because he's the main character. We learn a good amount about his history pretty early on. Marceline is a secondary character, and she's, even in the episodes where she's focused, we usually don't talk about her past.
Yeah.
So when we do find these little pieces of her past, it's kind of like a little treasure, So those episodes are very good.
Yeah.
Particularly the one where we go inside of her head.
Oh yeah. We learn a bit about her, because lately when we've learned about her past, it's been her far past when she is a child. And that episode's interesting
Yeah.
because we learn about some of the in between. We
Yeah.
learn about some of her later past, where she had a boyfriend and her boyfriend was a jerk, and
And
she-
it,
yeah,
it's another one of those episodes where we get to see those little weaknesses in her
Yeah.
that are really, really, characterizing.
and of course I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to the Fiona and Cake episodes, which
Oh, definitely.
I've always enjoyed. They're, despite being what people would figure to be just kind of fan episodes, basically, they're well written. They're well written.
Oh, they're very well developed. I mean, it's just their attempt. I think one of the main reasons they did it was because they were like, girls watch this show too. Why don't we just try doing something for them for once? Well,
Yeah,
we
and-
have this gender swapped aspect of it, so let's go with that.
Yeah, and Fiona is a strong female character.
She's but at the same time, she's not like one of the things I really had an issue with in all these we need strong female character type things that were going on lately is I think it's a great idea. It's a perfect movement. It's a real good way to get girls to know, hey, you don't have to just be an object that lusts after whatever man is nearby, but girls still, just like boys, want to be part of a relationship with somebody, and they're searching for that. And she's a strong, very strong female character, but at the same time, she has that weakness of there's a person I like that I go after.
And I think moreover than that is with Fiona, the problem I've had with kind of the strong female characters, like you're saying, is that a lot of these female characters are all kind of the same. They're just women with muscles.
Yeah.
Fiona's a person. Is what I like about her. She has regular feelings. She can fight, but she still is concerned with regular things.
Yeah, she has her own thoughts and fears and insecurities, as well as the things that she's gung ho about.
Yeah, she's Finn. She's a female Finn.
Exactly, and that's why I think it works so well. I would love to see more of these episodes. I don't want there to be a whole series of. I mean, unless it goes on for 7 seasons, and we get just enough episodes to make a full season. But I really love they make these episodes so special. With the fact that they only release them every now and then, and they're really, really expertly written.
Yeah.
They're
So
very good.
do you have any favorite songs from either?
Song? Oh god, anything that that Rebecca Sugar wrote. She has she uses a lot of sevenths and augmented chords, and it has this very old classical because she's playing them on the uke.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is actually very traditional and sounding and kind of reminiscent of the uke's vaudeville days, which I really haven't studied a whole lot because it's not the style of music that I play. But those kind of songs really capture the instrument's strength really well, and indeed all music well, because then you see them played on the bass in the show or on a guitar or something, and she builds those melodies so perfectly. Like even the one of my favorites, the lullaby that Jake sings.
Yeah.
Don't be weepy, sleepy puppies. They're perfect. They're really, really good songs.
Yeah, and with regular show, they don't really do any of their own songs except very specific situations. But the songs that they
get great music.
They get some really good songs. And actually, the two biggest moments are two of my favorite songs. You have Mississippi Queen during the Mississippi Queen episode, where they drink the drink that's so spicy that it basically causes a drunk effect.
Yeah.
The best way to explain it. And then you have one of the best references in the entire show is during the Geese episode. When they become Voltron, do you remember what plays? It's the touch.
Yes, you got the touch.
And you know what that's a reference to, right?
You got the power.
Do you know what that's a reference to?
No, I probably I don't know.
That's a reference to the Transformers movie, where when he powers up, that's what plays in the Transformers movies.
Yes.
So yeah, that's probably one of my favorite moments too.
That's such a great episode.
So let's go ahead and get final thoughts.
Okay.
What let's give first thoughts too. I'm gonna go ahead and share
Okay.
the full story. You and me started Adventure Time with the same episode
Mhm.
because the day before you saw it, I was talking with a friend online. He said, "There's this really good show on Cartoon Network you should watch." Like, I don't really watch Cartoon Network shows anymore. I'm not really into it at all. And he said, "You should watch at least this part." And he sent me the song from Evicted.
Mhm.
And it's like, huh, that's actually really good. So I I went and found a place to watch it, and I watched that episode. And like I said, wow, it's a really good episode. So I watched a bunch of episodes, like, wow, this is a really good show. And the next day, I went and visited you, and
Mhm.
said, hey, dude, you should watch this thing. And I showed you Evicted.
Mhm.
And so that was the first episode we ever watched.
Yeah.
And it was a really good episode.
It was because it's again one of those aspects of exploring this foreign world. That episode particularly is really good about it, and it kind of really captures everything that works so well in that series. You know, there's the music and the explorative aspect, and the idea that you'll have friends that you may not find in exactly the right place, and you have to kind of dig deep to find out what it is that's worth holding on to in the world, which we eventually find out is, you know, his friends, his dogs,
Yeah.
which she then tries to steal from him. Marceline had kind of a really dark origin.
Yeah, that's what I'm
in the
saying. She
show.
started as like the friendly antagonist. She was very antagonistic towards Jake, especially, but in a very playful way. She wasn't.
I really liked that. The first episode I can really remember loving, though, was actually the next day I saw Guardians of Sunshine. I loved that episode because it was completely different style from what they were typically doing.
We are in a computer game.
We're computer boys, not computer girls. It was so perfect. It was really well done. I particularly always loved that episode. Is actually really special to me.
So when I say final thoughts, and
Mhm.
I guess I can't really share many big memories with regular show because I kind of started regular show like I think like last year or the year before. And I just kind of
I started it a couple years ago thanks to my friend Devon, who was a big fan of it. And it's great. I don't really have any kind of like special remembering of watching it. I'd watched it and I was like, this is good. It's funny.
Well, I think the another big reason that kind of Adventure Time meant a lot to me is because, like, I think a little bit afterwards is when I started talking to like, Fred Cyber and Predator, and that's when I kind of started to get to know them. And actually it was because of Adventure Time that I got in contact with them.
Yeah.
For reasons related to the show. I got an interview with him and I started working with him. So that's the main reason it holds a lot to me. And
Yeah.
I love regular show. It's a fantastic show. It just doesn't have the same memories.
Yeah.
And it's not any fault to it. It's different. So I guess final thoughts is like, is it a good show? Are they good shows?
Oh, definitely. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that would argue against that, and whoever does is probably dead inside. So.
Yeah, and it speaks a lot for them that they've gone 5 seasons.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, they've completely reinvigorated the idea of, particularly the interaction of fans on the internet with the shows, because they've been very interactive with their fans on the internet with the shows. And it's perfect that the cartoons that really, you know, bring this about are as good as they are, because at the same time that they're becoming this sort of underlying phenomenon online, they're cultural phenomenons here, out in just the regular world.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that it's gotten bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Especially with the latest regular show and Adventure Time season. I don't know if you noticed this, but they're huge.
Yeah.
Like every season before that was 26 10-minute episodes.
Yeah.
And
now there's
it's looking to end off. It's looking to end off at 52.
Yeah.
So it's literally doubled the last season.
And that's because more people are tuning in because they're really good.
Yeah,
shows.
It's a fantastic show, and if you aren't watching Adventure Time or regular show, I don't know what to say.
Well, I mean, they're not a cultural phenomenon on the level of like Pokemon, but they're a cultural phenomenon on the level of Dexter's Laboratory, Ed, Edd and Eddy, Powerpuff Girls,
Johnny Bravo.
Johnny Bravo, SpongeBob. They're
Yeah.
big things because they're really good quality shows, and they're definitely worth checking out if you haven't tried them yet. Adventure Time was the first one I tried. Regular
Yeah.
show I loved. It took me a bit of watching before I really got into it, but it had just enough to carry me from episode to episode to really get invested in the characters.
Okay. So let's do this. Name 3 episodes of each series that you would recommend a person who had never watched to start with.
For Adventure Time, watch Guardians of Sunshine. Let's see.
I'd say I started with Evicted. I don't know if that's a fantastic episode to start with, but it's a good one.
It is a very good rounded out episode. Watch What Was Missing? Guardians of Sunshine, What Was Missing? Because that's like a really important episode in the development of all the main characters, with the exception of Ice King.
But with What Was Missing, that's a much later episode. So
It is a much later episode.
So yeah, like you might miss some like back development from, but
Yeah.
I guess it doesn't matter too much, especially with that one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, What Was Missing? Guardians
And
of
watch
Sunshine.
I don't remember what it's called, but it's the episode where Ice King where they break into Ice King's place and rescue all those princesses that he's holding.
Are
It's one. I think it's from the first season. It's where we first see Slime Princess.
okay.
They break into his house and they get captured by him.
Oh yeah.
and-
Okay, I remember that one.
Yeah, because that helps. All 3 episodes help set up the tone of the show. You get really good character development out of them, and you get to see every single one of the main characters doing what they're known for, basically.
I would say all of those.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I would add a couple onto that.
Okay.
I would say definitely. Of course, if you're going to start a show, start with the first episode.
Yeah.
And it's a good first episode. Slumber Party Panic. I would also say
I'm gonna stand here with my back turned and my defense is lowered.
if you want to kind of see their sillier side, watch Ricardio the Heart Guy.
Oh, George Takei.
And yeah,
It's very good. Yeah.
And if to kind of cross over, you should also watch Oceans of Fear, which, by the way, is written by J.G. Quintel.
Mm-hmm.
So let's hop over to regular show.
Oh, before we do that, I mentioned Sons of Mars. Did you know it was written by Doug TenNapel?
Who's that?
The guy that did Earthworm Jim.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He had written he'd either written or storyboarded an episode from the first season that never got off the ground, but he wrote that whole episode. That was him. I think it's one of the reasons it's so different.
What's his name?
Doug TenNapel.
Okay.
He's one of the minor giants of animation from the previous generation.
Yeah, and Earthworm Jim is one of those that just kind of didn't get very much love, but it was a good show.
It was a genuinely good show.
Yeah. So
for a regular show, watch the prank phone call episode.
And watch
the geese episode.
The Power, which is also the first episode of that.
The first episode of that, yes. And watch the geese episode. I mean, it'll get you into the series. It's great. If you still feel like you need one more episode to get into, watch the Bro Unicorns episode.
No, I actually will say something else. I just
No?
need to remember.
Okay.
Oh, what is it? It's the episode where they go against the rappers.
Oh yeah. Where Pops becomes a rapper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Let's see.
No, I have to look it up.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. Basically the episode is about a couple of rappers come into town, and they basically challenge the main people to a diss off.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up, yeah. What season is that? That's season. I think that's season 2, isn't it?
I think so, but let's see.
That is season 3, actually.
Season 3, yeah. It's episode 9.
But it features Donald Glover and Tyler the Creator as the rappers, and basically it's rapping with magical powers.
It's really cool.
It's a well-known episode, and you get to kind of get to know the characters of Mordecai and Rigby, and one of their main features in the later seasons, which is they'll just randomly start singing, and this is kind of where it developed from. And actually, in one of the
well, I mean, it seems to be a form of crimping from the Mighty Boosh, what they're doing.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. That's kind of what comes from Mighty Boosh too. Is that it's crimping.
Yeah.
With
you also get to see a small development of Pops. You get to see him be almost serious for once in that episode.
Yeah, and actually in one of the latest episodes that I watched, it was the one where they're performing as a street performer.
Mm-hmm.
They bring back the powers of rhyme.
Yeah. That's the one where they're going against the guy who's stealing their bit, right?
Yeah, they go against the guy who's stealing his bit, but at the end, when they do the competition, they go into a long, basically, rhyme.
Yeah.
And they use their powers at the end, which is they developed in this episode.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting, and a very interesting callback.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep. Those are the episodes to go and check out.
Yep. So
check out the whole series of both of them, though. Definitely.
Yep, definitely. You will never you will not regret.
You won't regret it.
You will not regret watching all of Adventure Time. You will not regret watching all of regular show. Though I will go ahead and say, regular show takes a little bit to get used to.
Yeah. No, I mean it's an undercurrent for most of it. I mean it's not like laugh out loud funny for most of it, but it flows beautifully.
Yeah.
They're both great shows. Go watch them.
Yeah.
And read the comments.
I've been Zach.
I've been Evan.
I hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Flip your tunes. Danny Candy. Flip your tunes. Danny Candy.
Cartoon!
Danny Candy.